now, and I will admit everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. We are excited that you are here with us. If you have not already, I would recommend going ahead and muting yourself so that we don't get any reverb off of anybody's laptops. My name is Roxy Deer. I am the Director of Professional Development for the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. And I am joined today with Melissa Vance from the Wayne County Chamber, the President and CEO. So Melissa, I'll let you go ahead and introduce our speakers today.
Absolutely. So again, welcome to everyone that's on the call. Just to let you know, we are recording and we will be posting this audio and video afterward for those that weren't able to make it, or if there's information that you want to go back and grab later, that works too. We are really pleased to have with us on the call today Jason Bierce and Mike Ripley from the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. If you recall, those of you that were with us at Read Health recently, we had Jason Bierce with us and talking about the legislative agenda that was coming up for this year. Little did we all know that the legislative agenda would totally be different once we hit March. So we're glad to have him back along with Mike Ripley. And I'm going to just let Jason, I'm going to let you and Mike introduce yourselves. Tell a little bit about what your roles are at the Indiana Chamber.
Okay, well, thank you, Melissa. Yes, as she said, Jason Bierce. My role, I'm Vice President of Education and Workforce Development for the Chamber. So that spans issues related to K-12 and higher education, as well as workforce-related issues. My background is primarily in education policy. Prior to coming to the Chamber, I worked for several years at the State Higher Education Commission. Mike, you want to introduce yourself? Maybe? I think he's muted.
There we go. Sorry, Mike, you were muted.
Thank you. That's great. It's good to be here this afternoon. Thank you, Melissa and Jason. I'm Mike Ripley. I've been working with the Chamber now for about almost 12 years. That was my 12th session. I handle issues. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare and Labor and Employment, so I handle healthcare issues and labor, UI, workers' comp, and civil justice issues.
And based on my portfolio, you can see why I drafted him in to help with today's call, because I'm feeling that your members are going to have some questions related to Mike's areas of expertise.
Yes, I think it's going to be very relevant to hear from the two of you today. And I know that a lot of information is being shared from the state level, and it's hard for us who are in our workplace every day trying to keep work going and still try and funnel all of the information that's flowing so quickly, and really even to decipher what the most current information is coming out. So it's really good to have you with us and maybe giving us that most recent update and helping us make sense of all of the verbiage and changes that we're seeing coming up.
As we go through today, if you have questions, feel free to throw those into the chat box and I will collect those, and we will have a question and answer session towards the end of the webinar.
So I know we had a couple more people joining us. Thanks again for joining us. We have with us, in case you missed the introductions, Jason Bierce and Mike Ripley from the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. And I went ahead and put up on the screen for you all the link to the Indiana Chamber website that has coronavirus updates. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Jason, and what this portal is and how you're using it?
Sure. We're just kind of using this as our hub for any and all relevant information that we think might be helpful or instructive to the employer community. We're adding to it almost on a daily basis, including Yesterday, with the governor's announcement of this stay-at-home order through early April, and we include links to anything that we think might be helpful to you, whether that's the governor's executive order, kind of providing additional details around, what is an essential business and what is not, and to what degree should various businesses be open during this time, which I know is a top area of interest and concern for many of our employers. We also have resources both at the state and federal level to, the State Department of Health, things coming from the CDC, et cetera. So really, we're just trying to make it a relatively simple and curated, but one-stop shop just to give you information as it comes available, including this morning, the state rolled out, I understand it was a bit of a rocky rollout, but they rolled out a hotline for employers to answer various business calls. In the event that someone on the line here tried that this morning, you may have had some difficulty getting through. I think they were just overwhelmed with the volume of calls, but I've been told that one, the number is accurate because we weren't sure about that for a second. But two, if you got some sort of message that said something about the number not being in service, whatever, that was solely a matter of technical issues that they were having due to just the volume of calls that were coming through. But they do have an email address there that you can submit questions to. That is also on our website, as well as we have a link on that webpage that Melissa and Roxy were kind of to put up on the screen that has an option for you to submit questions there as well. So as new information becomes available, FAQs, links to webinars that we think might be helpful, additional clarity or parameters from the public health officials, we'll make that available to you. And, like everyone, I think that we're just kind of, to some degree, figuring this out as we go along and just trying to provide the best information we can as it becomes available. Of course, with every new bit of information, it maybe raises as many questions as it answers. And so we'll just continue to work our way through it. Mike, I don't know if there's anything that in particular that that we've rolled out here in the last week or so that you think might be of particular importance, or we might want to call attention to folks.
Yeah, I don't have anything really specific at this point. I thought you did a very good overview, Jason. I can talk about some UI things here in a little bit, but I thought that was good information that you provided.
And I mentioned this to Melissa at the outset, and I will send a link here in a moment. I said we're going to be doing webinars, including one tomorrow that's going to be focused on the details related to that first relief package that Congress rolled out a week or so ago. I'm sure you're reading the same news headlines we are, that Congress is debating details on a second larger relief package, and as soon as that becomes available, I'm sure we'll do something as well. We're also trying to coordinate conference calls or webinars with the governor and our representatives out in DC. So again, as new information becomes available, we're going to share it directly or indirectly through our partners like Melissa and her colleagues. But I'll send a specific link to that webinar tomorrow at noon during our call here today. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Great. Well, I know that some of the questions I got immediately yesterday when the governor made his announcement was, what is an essential business and how do we decipher that? Can one of you, I know there's a more detailed list and that's on your site. I think we've shared that out as well on our end. But in looking through that, many of the questions that I have been getting is, I'm not considered an essential business, but I supply an essential business, and it makes it look like it's okay for me to stay open. Can you touch on that a little bit?
You want to take the first crack at that one?
Sure. The list as you've gone through it, and we've had a lot of questions related to this, and I think here would be our suggestion. If you do supply to many of those things, you've got transportation, automotive, you've got food suppliers, you've got construction, those types of, whatever the business is, if you are a supplier, I think that the governor has allowed for deference to be broad enough that It would allow for some of those things that you're just not quite sure of, but you do supply. So I don't think there's a real hardcore fast penalties at this point if you make that a mistake and you stay open. So I think you would be okay. We've had when you look at that list, it's a lot broader than I had originally thought would be. There were things on there that I was kind of surprised were actually listed. And I know that someone asked about, I think there was some discussion about casket company, and there was a provision in there related to burial. So I'm assuming that could easily fall into that category as well. So supplying to those necessary essential things, I think, is a fair look-see. My understanding, there isn't going to be any arrests or that kind of thing, impunitive type measures at this point, because he even makes it general and open so that we err on the side of what is appropriate and what is helpful in terms of public safety and health.
Yeah, I think the only exception to that, which I doubt applies to on this call, is they are being pretty direct about restaurants and bars and so forth, that they could be subject to losing their liquor license if they move beyond just the carryout capacity. I think most restaurants are doing right now. But beyond that, I think my understanding is that they're just asking for people to use their discretion. But whenever possible, as the governor said, hunker down.
Right. Yeah. And so in Wayne County, prior to the governor's announcement yesterday, our county officials announced last week they wanted employers to reduce their workforce by 30%. So hopefully, even those that are staying open, that are suppliers or are considered supporting those essential businesses, hopefully they're at least functioning at a reduced level and allowing those that are able to work from home do so. Do you anticipate that, and I know it's hard to guess, but you're in the State House on a daily basis and you're right there with all these folks. Do you anticipate that a more stringent order is going to come?
Mike, I don't know what you heard. I think it would just be speculation on my part if I were to say anything other than there's clearly kind of an ongoing debate, maybe primarily at the federal level, between the administration and the public health community. Of course, public health wants to err more on the side of rigidity, and the president is maybe a little bit more focused on trying to limit the impact to the economy. I think our governor's been pretty, I don't want to say deferential, but he seems to be moving more inclined to be on the cautious and conservative side. But I've not heard anything at this point to suggest that there's immediate plans to do anything more restrictive. Of course, that could very well change as the testing availability increases and we get a better sense of how much Indiana is really being impacted by this right now. But at this point, it's sort of wait and see. Mike, I don't know if you have anything, since you've been part of the regular with DWD, if you've heard anything more specific than that.
No, that's fair. I think the only thing that the governor has stated and is trying to do, as you say, very cautiously, is to make certain that we bend that curve in terms of the number of outbreaks. And they're going, and the ISDH, the State Department of Health, is going to be evaluating that on a day-to-day basis, and those numbers are being given to the governor, if not hourly, at least by at least once a day. The thing is that as those numbers come in, and that if that bend in that curve, that health outbreak, flattens and we see some results of what's happening here, then I think we can expect that it shouldn't be any more stringent than it is currently has been ordered. However, I think it's fair to say that if the measures that have been taken at this point are not, effective, or folks aren't adhering to at least, staying home, then they may be a little more stringent. And he has kind of indicated in his executive order that, this could, he can continue this, he could do whatever necessary to make certain that we are really impacting this virus. And so I think that's probably the best way to say it. I've not heard anything plans to go any more differently, but it all depends on, are we being effective in the means that we've taken at this point?
And we were fortunate to have a call with Dr. Box, who's the head of the State Department of Health, late last week. She was pretty clear about how much we don't know yet, because at that point the availability of the testing was nowhere near where we need to be. They have a map on the State Department of Health website showing where the confirmed cases are. Not surprisingly, Marion County had was the epicenter, both in terms of being a population mass, but also having greater accesses with all the hospitals there. But I think as the healthcare community comes together and the state's trying to support them and be more seamless in the collaboration, the ability to diagnose the severity of the problem across the state is going to become a lot clearer, and that's probably going to be pretty telling in terms of what potential next steps might be coming from the governor and others.
Well, I want to go ahead and move into some information that I think would be helpful for those that are on the call in regard to unemployment insurance and what that looks like right now. How are businesses going to be affected in regard to their unemployment insurance rates in regard to this, and then what's that process looking like on the layoff side for the employer, and then what does it look like if we can kind of take a step across the line for the employee, and how can we make that an easier transition for both?
Well, those are all great questions, Melissa, and I'll try to do my best. Let me begin by saying, I think last week there were approximately 54,000 Hoosiers that filed for unemployment benefits. And I suspect most of those have to be directly related to the COVID-19 virus. What DWD has been hosting some kind of webinars and providing additional information for employers, and I'll try to go through that both from the employer perspective as well as the individual. Let me just make this statement right away. DWD has closed all of its Job One Center or Work One Center and the central office to the public. So if employees are going to be filing for unemployment benefits, they're going to have to do it online, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But from an employer perspective, the governor and DWD has indicated from a UI tax basis, you won't see any, of course, you won't see any impact on UI taxes or your experience rating for this year. That would come into the next for 2021. Now, there's discussion at this point, or has been, that that's going to be not impacted by the COVID-19. I'm not sure how they're going to do that yet. I don't know what that all means, and I'm going to be in contact with DWD as we move forward on how that's going to be applied, whether they'll just keep the experience rating the same. That's not clear quite yet, and it wasn't really clear in the conversation that they had in their webinar this morning. But if you happen to be an employer of if you have more than 50, let's put it this way, if you have more than 50 that you're going to lay off, 50 or more, DWD has a website, and I'll pass that along to Melissa. We'll figure out how to get that, and then I don't even think it's on our website yet, but it will be listed there, and you can go to this website, and if you have more than 50, to help move the process more quickly, they have a format, a form that you can fill out, and they need some information about the employees that, and I won't go into those specifics, but it'll help expedite the process and in terms of helping those individuals or those employees get benefits more quickly, and just to kind of expedite and make the process a little more efficient. For individuals, as I mentioned, they need to go to, if they have a laptop or a tablet or a smartphone, they must file online. Now, I know that the DWD is attempting right now, for those who might not have access to those devices, they're working on some kind of phone application, and I don't think that's been rolled out yet, but should be soon, and we'll keep folks posted on that. But what they're telling everyone is, now some employers have indicated, well, you may not be eligible for benefits, so there's no even sense to apply. Have the individuals go ahead and apply. Now there are of course, there are length of time requirements 4 out of the 5 last months. There's income requirements, and then there's one other thing that I'm drawing a blank on right now. But DWD has said, let us make that call. Let the individual go ahead and apply, and they'll make the call in terms of eligibility. The employees have got to be honest if they're working currently, or if they're not, or if there has been a layoff, and that DWD can at least confirm that with the employer. And then the question came up in one of the discussions. Okay, what about if you have vacation and sick time? You do not have to allow an employee, you don't have to require them to take the vacation and sick time. It's up to they're choosing you're choosing if you want, but it's not required as a condition of a UI. Now, DWD will ask that question to the employee when they get on there, if they are currently taking vacation, if they have some sick pay or sick time that you're compensating them for. Those questions will be on there, but those are not mandatory that they have to take those before they get UI benefits. The real key to this, and you can direct your employees, is just to be honest about the circumstances. If they've got a part-time job and they have other income, those kind of things are really important to determine whether claims benefits are available. Just some general tips of guidance that DWD has put out, and I think it's coming from the governor's office, is, have your employees, even if whether you're essential or you're non-essential, whatever they've indicated, make certain your employees are working from home as much as possible, telecommunication, that type of thing, if at all possible, the least amount of employees necessary, even for essential functions, as possible. If your employees are sick and have a fever, they should remain home for 72 hours if they have had a fever, and on top of that, 7 days since some symptoms have occurred. This is a good time to update sick leave policies, flexible, non-punitive type things. It's good to kind of review some of those things. Encourage your employees to self-check every day, whether they have the symptoms, cough, fever, shortness of breath, those kind of things. And if someone develops shortness of breath while they're at work and some respiratory, and it appears they do, send them home, restrict them. Those things you need to do to protect your place of business and your other workers. And then you just really have to be prepared to change business activity. That kind of just gives you a general idea of some of the things that we've been talking about in the UI world. At this point, I'll stop, and if there's any questions or any additional information
so the waiting period for an individual, they have 1 week without pay, is that correct?
Yeah, the way the system is set up currently, go ahead, even if you get laid off, you go ahead and make the application, And he's telling us, or Josh Richardson, who's the chief deputy, indicated it's going to be probably 3 weeks before they actually get a deposit to their account or one of their, however they do their credit card type things. He said it's going to be about 3 weeks, but there is a 1 week waiting period in terms of the actual where your benefits before they would begin to accrue.
Okay.
And
Rob-
to my knowledge, that has not been waived at that point. I think that has to be done statutorily.
Roxy, I know you've been getting some questions. Are there questions that you want to go ahead and ask related to these topics?
We'll start with the first one, and it's just if you have any information, this might be asking for some inside secrets. If you have any updated timeline on when Indiana will receive additional test, the COVID-19 test.
I should, but I don't, and I know that I have not been in contact with ISDH on that to determine what those numbers are. I don't have that information, and I'll do my best to see if we can get some of that and get that out on our website as well.
And then the next question we had may just spark another discussion, and it's about the relief bills that are coming. And they want to know what the what businesses can do to help pass those, what they can do to encourage senators to work on that bill. And then what are the state chamber and what is the Wayne County Chamber doing to work with our senators on that?
Well, I mean, our CEO and Kevin Brenninger, as well as Ellis, who one of our colleagues who also has federal relations in his portfolio, they've been having ongoing conversations with Senator Braun and Senator Young and their staff. I think they're well aware of, the sense of urgency that we and our members and other employers across the state feel on this issue. If you've been reading any of the news coverage, there's two proposals out there. One that came from the Senate Republicans, another that's come from the House Democrats. Both are very significant with really serious dollars attached with them. It seems like the major sticking point right now is how much of the focus is on the employer side of the equation and how much of it is focused on direct relief to workers and what are some of the stipulations attached with that. Mike might know more than I do at this point. It's one of the reasons why we're hoping to get a direct conference call or Zoom call with our legislative representatives out in DC to have maybe some more real-time information. But the news reports that I've read and what I've heard anecdotally from folks is that the negotiations are ongoing. I think they maybe have broken through whatever the impasse was 24 hours ago, and they're getting close. But Mike, I don't know if you have anything more specific than that. It never hurts to reach out to your designated representative and let them know that this is important to you, or work through your chamber or our chamber or the U.S. chamber. But I think there's a bunch of advocates that are impressing upon our Congress people the gravity of the situation, and I think they know they need to act quickly. Just like most things in the legislative process, it doesn't happen as quickly as we might like. Mike, do you have any color to add to that might be of interest or helpful to folks on the line?
Yeah, I know that they were getting close this morning, there was a difference in the stock market I'm aware of, but I don't know all the details and what the fine tuning differences are. We are, as Jason indicated, we're working, and both Greg Ellis and Kevin are having contacts with our senators and congressmen. At this point, I really don't have anything additional to add, Jason. I thought you did a good job covering that.
And I don't want to overstate this, but I think it's encouraging that our senators have been proactive in reaching out to us and some of the other business associations that they want to hear from us and they want to hear from our members. So I think that's an encouraging sign that they're well aware that they need to be responsive to their constituents and the business community in particular.
Yeah, and I'll add, from the local side, we have, as all of you, been trying to grasp the information that's been flowing in so quickly and, pare it down to what's relevant to our members and get that out to you. Quite honestly, that has taken a lot of our time. But that said, we really rely on our connection with the U.S. Chamber, helping represent us and what's going on here. And we stay in connection with those folks, just like we stay in connection with Jason and Mike and his team, their team in Indianapolis for the state legislative issues. I have been in contact a lot this week with Senator Rotz and somewhat with Senator or Representative Barrett on the state level, but I have not had a chance to connect with the national legislators. So I don't have anything more to add on that right now. I wish I did, but hopefully we'll have some good news coming out today. I think everybody wants that resolve to happen.
Great, thank you. And then the last question we have right now, and if you have more questions, feel free to add them to the chat box, or you can privately message me with those questions. We have a question that wants to know, in addition to the unemployment, are there other things that people can apply for if they have been affected by a COVID-19 layoff?
Do one of you guys want to talk about the SBA loans and the relief that's available for small businesses?
Can you comment on those, Jason?
I wish I had more pertinent details. I think, and apologies in advance to the extent we're not able to give you real direct answers to some of these questions, but we'll work to the extent we don't have the answers and to the extent that those answers are available, we'll go back with Melissa and make sure that we can send them information.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just comment briefly. We have gotten information in regarding those SBA loans. I believe those should have been emailed out to the primary representative for each one of our members this past week. But also, if anyone has questions on that, you can contact our office. We'll help direct you as quickly and easily as possible. Scott Underwood and Peggy Stanova from Small Business Development Center would also be your resources for those, and we can get you that contact information if you need it. We talk about unemployment insurance and unemployment claims for individuals that are laid off. What is happening for the small business owners, for instance, the retailers and the restaurants and bars that are having to close or have had to close because they don't offer the carryout option? How does unemployment work for them?
Mike?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Could you repeat?
So is there a difference in unemployment claims for self-employed individuals if they own a small business that has had to close? Can they themselves claim unemployment, or is that not available?
Now I understand the question. At this time, the self-employed, that has been one of the bones of contentions among some of the legislators, but self-employed cannot claim work or unemployment insurance. It's just for the employee. And the bad thing is they still have to pay it on themselves, but they can't claim it. And there's been an attempt to try to do that, make that change, but at this point that it's not. I'm sorry to say, but they're not able to do that.
Is that something that once we get through this coronavirus mess that you think legislators will circle back around to and address for future needs?
I think number one, well, let me back up one thing, because I just found a little note that I had this morning. I know that there is supposed to be some disaster federal relief coming for the self-employed, but I don't have any more details on it at this point. In specific answer to your question, I suspect, I know of one legislator in Fort Wayne who is a business owner, and he's complained about this many a times, but it hasn't taken root yet. And I suspect there will be more legislators that will want to address it and have further discussions about it. Yes.
Great. Roxy, any other questions that have come in, or any of you that are on the call right now, if you have a question and haven't submitted it, please feel free to either raise your hand or type in the chat box.
I'm also, if we are giving links or resources, I'm dropping those in the chat box as well. I'm also going to post a Survey Monkey that we would love for anybody on this chat to take. We're just gathering some information on what your concerns are, so that we can drive these conversations more specifically for you.
Yeah, and while Mike was talking about unemployment insurance, I checked our resource page, and there are direct links to the self-service centers for employers as well as workers under the tools you can use heading, which is the second area. It's organized by health related first, and then tools you can use immediately following that. And then also I dropped in the unemployment.in.gov website, which is the Department of Workforce Development's direct website with that information as well. And just as we're having webinars, and of course, Melissa and her team are having webinars, DWD is also having webinars, and they have one tomorrow afternoon specific to UI. So, and they are archiving and posting a related session they had, I think, this morning. So we'll keep adding kind of the high level links on our site, but as Roxy said, there's hopefully some useful information you can use just in the chat box here today as well.
Melissa, we did have one other question come through. If the relief bill goes through and it's true that people would receive somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000, could the Wayne County Chamber establish a fund locally to accept money from those who would not really need the money but want to help out our businesses and employees? Or is there another group that we could collaborate with?
That's a great question. I actually had thought about that too, because I know that there are people who are going to be getting checks in the mail that don't need it. And we do have a great concern for the small businesses that are being affected and having to close their doors temporarily. We do have a 501c3. So for those of you that aren't aware of how the chamber functions, because we're a member organization, we are a 501c6, which means we're nonprofit, but not charitable. That said, we also do have a charitable organization that we use for certain projects. And that is a 501c3. It's called the Chamber Center for Excellence. And should our board decide to take that issue up and approve it, there could be a fund that's set up in the Chamber Center for Excellence for something like that. I also know that Wayne County Foundation is taking measures to help folks that are in need right now. I think right now they're primarily focusing on the nonprofit side, but it's possible that we could collaborate with them if necessary. So that's a great question. I will certainly take that to our board for a discussion, and we'll keep you posted on that.
And this is one of many details they're wrangling about in DC, because I read that the Senate version, which is basically writing checks to everyone, but the House Democrat version of the bill would potentially require some sort of payback for individuals making over a certain income threshold. So I'm sure that's one of many tense discussions that are happening in DC as we speak. But it's a really fair question. Glad you raised it.
Yeah. Mike, I know before we started the call today, you mentioned a checklist that you wanted to go through for employers. Did we hit on all of those items?
Yeah, I mentioned those regarding the stay at home, the separation from work, if you have acute respiratory symptoms, and that list there is what I was referring to.
Okay, great. Well, I want to take a minute and give you guys a quick look at what's coming up in addition to the call that Jason mentioned that will take place tomorrow with Department of Workforce Development. That's not on here, but is in the chat box, correct?
Right. Well, there are two that I've confused everyone with today. There's one that we're hosting tomorrow at noon that's kind of helping employers sort through that first relief package that came through from the federal government. And then the one I mentioned a few moments ago that the Department of Workforce Development is doing is tomorrow at 3 o'clock relative to unemployment insurance. But again, I know we're throwing a lot of links, a lot of information, dates to you.
Yeah.
Between Melissa and our chamber resource page, you should be able to find the information you need in terms of upcoming events. And like this call, there are going to be archived versions of everything as well, whether we're doing it or others are doing it. So make sure you get the information you need, whether it's in real time or archived after the fact.
We started these calls last week with the first one, just because we knew there would be a lot of people that would have questions on various topics and want to collaborate and just stay in connection with one another. And so we're having these weekly think tank sessions at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays. Feel free to join us each week. We are going to try and have a relevant topic that we talk about, and I have no idea what that topic will be next week yet, just because things are changing so rapidly. But stay tuned. We will have that out to you before next week's call, so you'll know ahead of time. I know we have Roxy and we also have Laura Lee on the line, and there's a Zoom event this Thursday that I want to give you two a chance to talk about.
Great, thank you, Melissa. So this Thursday, we were going to have our normal business education luncheon. That's not happening because we can't be within 6 feet of each other. So we are going to host a virtual business education luncheon, and we've scrapped our old idea, and we're actually going to be doing a new topic specifically about where your business is at right now, this week, this moment, and then talking again about quick marketing things that you can do. Ashley Sieb will come in and talk just quick tips on marketing, but the biggest bulk of the discussion will be about finances, and Peggy Stanova from the East Central Small Business Development Corporation will be chatting about what you need to know as far as finances for your business. And so you can join us. This webinar is free. It's Thursday, March 26th at 11:30. We have a Facebook event, which I'll link in the chat as well. But we ask that you register in advance. That way we know what businesses will be represented in that webinar. We're expecting a big crowd for that one. If you can't make that specific time, let me know and I'll send you the recording as well.
This is going to be a Zoom call that you'll want to have your pad of paper handy, or a tablet or something, and take notes. There are going to be clear takeaways for you at this. These think tank calls are really informational. The business education luncheons are very educational. So informational versus educational. We want to make sure that you walk away with a checklist of things that you can do that are going to help your business and the bottom line moving forward. So we're really thankful that we have such great leaders and resources that we can turn to for that. Well, if no one else has any additional questions, Jason or Mike, you have any last things to add?
No, I think you've covered it well, Melissa. We just, one, appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and your members, and know that this is a tough time for everyone, particularly the employer community. Whether you reach us through Melissa or you have our email addresses there, we want to be helpful in any way we can. Apologies that we don't have more definitive information on any number of topics, but I think we're all just sort of figuring this out as we go, and as new information becomes available, we'll do our best to collect it, curate it, and give it back to our members in the larger employer community in a way that's helpful and actionable on your part. Mike, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, just thank you, Melissa, for allowing us to do this. As Jason said, we are trying to figure this out as we go, and we're in unprecedented times. And I just wish everybody just stay safe out there.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate both of you and what the Indiana Chamber does. The local chambers, we're busy at work in our communities and with our businesses directly, but we know that you're there staying connected with the state legislators and all the state issues, and doing things that we can't do daily. And so we appreciate the relationship that we have with you, and look forward to working with you more in the future. If you need anything from us, please feel free to reach out. And for those of you on the call, we do greatly appreciate each of your roles in the community. I know some of you that are on here are with nonprofits, educational institutions, and for-profits. So for all of those categories, you play a strong role in the community. And if there's anything we can do, please reach out to our team. With that, we'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
Have a great day.